For the most part, stop-motion animation is a medium that's both admired and underrated. With most major studios sticking with either hand-drawn or CGI, Aardman was the biggest and practically only name in town when it came to clay. But this all changed in 2009, when the studio Laika made its grand debut. Since then, Laika has released 5 films, each of them acclaimed and adored by many. Whether it's their film's darker themes, amazing attention to detail, incredible animation techniques, or their lovable characters, people love Laika.
Am I rambling? I'm a little nervous.
In honor of this great studio, we're going to look at each of their movies and see which of their clay creations are the most pure and which are the most evil. What's going on, guys? I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Laika Movies Good to Evil. Alright, let's make sure everyone is on the same page. The films we're going to be looking at are Coraline, Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings, The Box Trolls, and Missing Link. While we will try to list as many characters as possible, we're going to be focusing on the heroes and villains from each film, as well as some side characters that may have had significant impacts on the main characters. Okay, let's begin our list. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble characters and working our way down. These characters are the good. For the gold medal of good, we have the storyteller, Kubo. Kubo is kind-hearted, even before he becomes a hero. He takes care of his mother when she's in a catatonic state, making her food and tucking her in at night. As for his stories, we can see that he loves making people happy with these exciting tales, entertaining villagers of all ages, and making sure to incorporate some of their requests into the story, even if it's something as silly as a fire-breathing chicken.
Kill the chicken! Rip it to pieces!
Though snarky and slightly mischievous, Kubo tries to do good. When he disobeyed his mother and stayed out after sunset, it was an accident. He wasn't trying to rebel. He was hoping to see the spirit of his father. When it's time to go on his grand adventure, he grows as a hero. He only kills in self-defense, and when it's time for the final battle, he uses the power of love and memories to defeat his grandfather, the Moon King. After everything the Moon King put him and his family through, Kubo allows his grandfather to have a better life as a mortal human. For being merciful, brave, heroic, and kind, we can think of no greater Laika hero than Kubo.
I'm very grateful I've had the chance to meet you both.
In second place is Mr. Link, or Susan as he eventually names himself. Though not the most heroic, we can easily say that Susan is the most pure out of all the Laika characters. Having been isolated nearly all his life, all he wants is friends and a family. Because he's a peaceful creature, he doesn't like hurting people or doing wrong. In other words, he's a gentle giant. That being said, since he's clumsy and doesn't know his own strength, he'll cause property damage by accident. While he questioned Lionel about certain actions, like breaking into Adelina's home, he still followed Lionel's lead in the end. Susan is brave and loyal, believing that Lionel can be the hero and friend that Susan believes he is, and is always there to help Lionel and Adelina whenever they're in trouble. Though some may consider him a monster due to his appearance, he's a big sweetheart. Just below their son, we're giving Monkey and Beetle the bronze medal. Originally, these two were known as Hanzo and Sariatu. When they fell in love and had their son Kubo, they did all they could to protect him. Monkey is a mama bear and protective of Kubo. Though she may come off as tough and cold, she loosens up eventually. Considering that she's trying to keep her son safe from her evil family, we can't blame her for being concerned. As for Beetle, while his occasional forgetfulness and clumsiness makes him look goofy, he's a strong and skilled warrior and can be just as protective of Kubo as Monkey. He encourages Kubo and tries to teach him how to fish with a bow and arrow. Both characters sacrifice themselves for their family, with Hanzo staying behind to fight off his wife's family, getting cursed in the process, and Sariatu using her magic to protect her son, even when she knows doing so will kill her.
Your father and his army gave their lives.
Though they're both stubborn, and their moments of absence, both mentally and physically, still affected Kubo, we still consider them to be great parents and feel they deserve to be this high up. Next on this list is another parental figure, Grandma Babcock. Although she dies before the events of the movie, Grandma Babcock is probably the most supportive family member that Norman has. She refused to be reunited with her husband in the afterlife because she vowed that she would look out for her grandson no matter what.
Always look out for you.
Although she isn't able to do much in terms of heroic deeds, being dead, she's still a great and loving grandmother. She and Norman watch movies together, and she's there to offer him support whenever Norman needs it. While the rest of his family may wish that he was more normal, Grandma Babcock is the only one who accepts Norman for who he is and lets him know that being different isn't a bad thing. Adelina Fortnite is next. As the wife of a well-known adventurer, Adelina is adventurous herself. While she shuts herself off after her husband's death, she's willing to leave her home in order to help Susan find his family, after yelling at Lionel for stealing her husband's map, that is.
Give me back my husband's map.
While her skills as an adventurer are noteworthy, what really stands out is her kindness towards Susan and her patience with Lionel, talking sense into him and encouraging him to be a better friend to Susan. She may have a temper, but her moral code is strong. And though Susan is more innocent, it's Adelina who's the true conscience of the group. Neil is Norman's best friend. Despite being constantly bullied, Neil is friendly and cheerful and believes Norman when he tells him that he can see dead people.
Who's a good boy, huh? Good boy.
He even thinks Norman's powers are cool, and he's the only one, other than Norman's grandma, to see it as a good thing. When zombies come to life and start terrorizing the town, Neil is by Norman's side despite being scared, defending him whenever he thinks Norman is in danger. He even puts a zombie in a headlock when one busts through the roof of his brother's van, which is pretty awesome for a 10-year-old. He's not super bright, but he inspires Norman to be brave and is a good kid and a better friend. Although reluctant at first, Norman grew into his own as a hero. He starts out as shy and awkward, keeping to himself, not wanting to get bullied by people who don't believe him when he says he can talk to the dead. When his uncle asks him to continue the tradition of stopping the witch's curse, Norman refuses and is still reluctant about doing it even when he's eventually convinced.
What a dirty old creep. He's my uncle.
But as the movie progresses and things get more dangerous, Norman becomes more brave. He shames the zombies of the 7 judges for what they did to Aggie, speaks up in defense of the zombies, and calms Aggie down and helps put her spirit at peace, saving the town. He's definitely a hero in our eyes. Though he's awkward, YB is a good kid.
Short for Y-born. Not my idea, of course.
He's a good friend to Coraline. Both he and his other counterpart help her when it comes to escaping and warning her about Other Mother. He also saved Coraline when she's attacked by Other Mother's severed hand. He's kind of strange, enjoying odd things. He's also impulsive, saying things without thinking, like when he briefly made fun of Coraline's name and immediately regretted it. While he and Coraline aren't super close, he's still there for her, and given that Coraline likely would have been strangled if not for him, we feel he deserves a decent spot in the good tier. Next is Eggs. This 10-year-old has been raised by box trolls his entire life. Like the box trolls, Eggs is a tinkerer. He's naturally curious, as well as socially awkward. He spends so much time around box trolls and so little time around humans. He's a sweet kid, if odd. He proves to be braver than his box troll family too, standing up to Snatcher when the box trolls are captured and encouraging the box trolls to do the same.
We can fight back. Don't be afraid anymore.
He also doesn't disregard his adoptive family, even after learning the truth about himself as a human and meeting his biological father. Finally, in an act of mercy, Eggs tries to stop Snatcher from eating cheese, something that could kill him because of his allergy. After everything Snatcher had put Eggs and his family through, Eggs still tried to save him. That's pretty special and gets him a couple extra good points. Up next is Coraline Jones. Like a lot of child protagonists, Coraline is relatable, though that doesn't always make her the most moral. She acts out, either out of annoyance or boredom, and gets frustrated by people like her parents and YB. She can be snarky and abrasive and gives YB the nickname, "Why Were You Born?" after she hears his full name.
Why were you born?
That's pretty harsh. Over the course of the film, however, she matures and understands that while her parents may not always be able to pay attention to her, they still love her. She also saves the spirits of the other kids who were imprisoned by Other Mother and rescues her parents. We can't blame her for feeling frustrated at her parents. It's not always easy when it feels like your mom and dad are workaholics. Though she has her rough patches, she still does good enough to keep her out of the gray area. Wrapping up the good area, we have Winnie. While it would be easy to file her under the rich girl archetype, Winnie is more than that. She's outspoken and can be bratty. While many seem to be scared of the more grisly box troll stories, Winnie almost seems to revel in their macabre nature and is disappointed when she learns that they don't eat people or have rivers of blood in their cave.
I was promised mountains of bones.
strange, but it makes sense, since she's spunky and longs for excitement. She doesn't have many friends, and her parents are emotionally distant. You can forgive her for not always having the most tact or for coming on too strong. She helps save the box trolls and becomes friends with eggs, so she deserves to be listed as one of the good characters. That's it for the good characters. Now, let's look at the more neutral and morally questionable. This is the gray area. First up, we have the box trolls. While not nearly as evil as Snatcher claims, the box trolls keep to themselves. They steal garbage to tinker with, making inventions for their own little box troll society underground. Although kind and friendly, willing to raise a human baby as one of their own, they're also cowardly. Their first instinct when confronted by danger is to hide in their boxes, even when running would be a better option. Also, while they love each other, they also shrug it off when one of them is captured, not brave enough to rescue them. The only exception to this is Fish, Eggs' adopted father, who can be protective of him and will fight for him. Humans freak out at the sight of them, so we can't blame them for being scared. Other than being kind to Eggs and eventually standing up for themselves due to his encouragement, they don't do anything that heroic as a group, making them feel more neutral. Next on our list are Mel and Charlie Jones, Coraline's parents. These two can easily be interpreted as workaholics, focusing on their upcoming deadline while moving to a new home. Because of this, they are exhausted, which we see in Charlie, or crabby, like we see in Mel. They acknowledge that they could be better as parents and do a better job of showing that they care, with Mel reaching out to Coraline and buying her the glove she wanted.
Well, I guess I'll see you around, you dizzy dreamer.
They need to make money for the sake of their family, so we understand them putting extra focus into their work. But we can understand Coraline's side as well. Courtney, Norman's big sister, is next. Courtney starts off as the mean big sis to Norman. Like their parents, she sees her brother as a freak, insisting that he's a liar, and gets annoyed whenever she has to look after him.
OMG, you are such a liar.
Even when she goes after him, she's still partially focused on getting the attention of the cool jock, Mitch. However, Courtney's still a decent sister, concerned whenever Norman is in danger and calling out the townspeople when they attack Norman. While they still aren't super close, it's obvious that deep down she cares about him. When she hears from Norman about how much it hurts that people, including her, don't believe him, Courtney becomes more supportive and kind.
Not letting you give up now.
Like Coraline's parents, we can understand her negative traits, given that she's just a teenager. So we put her pretty high up in the gray tier. The adventurous and morally dubious Sir Lionel Frost is next. Out of all of Laika's protagonists, it can be argued that he's the least good. Wanting to be known as a great adventurer, Lionel is self-absorbed, has a huge ego, and is definitely an ends justify the means type of guy. At first, he cares more about capturing a sea monster than protecting his assistant.
Now, what do we say?
Help me!
He was willing to steal from his friend Adelina when she wouldn't give them her husband's map. When he agrees to help Susan, it's because he wants to use Susan to help accomplish his own dreams of fame. While he has a few negative traits, Lionel is decently noble. He only fights in self-defense, and when Adelina helps him realize how awful he's been towards Susan, he tries to make up for it and becomes a better person and friend.
We will find your place.
He's so focused on himself that it's hard for him to realize that he's awful. Though still an egotist, he never crosses that line and becomes entitled. He still has a lot of improving to do, and we feel confident enough in his good qualities to put him in the gray tier. Next is Agatha Prendergast. For most of Paranorman, Agatha is an evil spirit of a witch that's out for revenge against the town. But once Norman is able to calm her down, we see that she's not evil. She's just a little girl. Much like Norman, Aggie had powers that were seen as dangerous by other people. Even though Aggie never wanted to hurt anyone, like any other little girl, she wanted to play and be with her mother. But once she was deemed a witch, she was executed. Her death was celebrated by the town 300 years later, not knowing the true tragedy behind the story.
Those horrible men came and took me away.
Although it was wrong of her to curse the 7 judges and unleash zombies onto innocent people, you can understand how angry and hurt she felt after everything she went through. After being comforted by Norman, she was able to realize that although she was hurt, that didn't mean that it was okay for her to hurt others.
But there's always someone out there for you.
Afterwards, Aggie was able to lift the curse and be at peace. While she has a temper, her willingness to admit that she was wrong and take back the curse shows that she was never bad, despite the legends. Alvin is next on our list. Starting off as a school bully, he actually becomes an ally for Norman, being part of the team that tries to defeat the zombies. He defends Norman from the townsfolk alongside Courtney, Neil, and Mitch, and is horrified that the town would even think about hurting a kid.
Shame on every single one of you!
However, while he has more good moments compared to other bully characters, Alvin is still awful. He constantly picks on Neil and Norman and threatens to beat the latter up. However, what keeps him from falling any lower, aside from the previously mentioned good qualities, is that Alvin is a loser. You get the sense that bullying is all he knows, and that, if he was able to go from antagonist to ally, maybe he could make a full turnaround one day, once he becomes a bit more mature. Judge Hopkins is the embodiment of what fear can make a person do. He, along with the 6 other judges, sentenced Agatha to death when they believed that she was practicing witchcraft. Aggie was only 11 years old. In any other film, Hopkins would have likely been considered a villain and monster. Hopkins and the judges ruled out of fear, and Hopkins deeply regretted it.
I was wrong.
He realized how wrong they were, that their fear wasn't an excuse for killing someone who was an innocent kid, and wanted to make up for it. Even as zombies, he and the other judges never try to harm or hurt anyone, only trying to get their attention so they can reveal the truth behind the witch's curse. While we can't completely forgive him, we acknowledge that he wasn't evil, but was instead misguided. At the end of our grade tier, we find Lord Portly Rind. In Laika films, we've seen good parents and we've seen questionable parents. Portly definitely is questionable, and depending on who you are, you can make an argument that he belongs in the bad. As leader of the White Hats, all Portly cares about is cheese. At the start of the movie, when he's told that the box trolls have stolen a child and broken into a cheese shop, he's only horrified by the cheese part.
Go to town, exterminator. I'll pay whatever it takes.
He ignores his daughter, leading to Winnie feeling lonely and neglected. While we agree with anyone who wants to call this guy a villain, we feel that for our list, he does just enough to avoid the bad tier. Though he is oblivious, he cares about Winnie and will trade his white hat for her life. Granted, he tried negotiating first, but he did the trade, so that's something.
What about Broderick's hat? It's just as white and fluffy.
He supports her at the end of the movie, attending her show and listening to her stories. Additionally, while characters like Snatcher were malicious, you can make an argument that Portly is just dumb and oblivious. Not that this excuses his actions, but it makes him less like an awful person and more someone who just makes bad decisions. Considering the rich lifestyle he was raised in, you can also see how he got to be so oblivious and selfish. Again, this is no excuse, but it's still good to acknowledge a person's circumstances and how that may end up shaping their morality. Like we said, if it weren't for the small moments of love he showed for his daughter, Portly would probably be in the bad tier. So consider him right on the edge of gray. Finally, we've come to the dark side, the most cruel and the most heartless. These are the bad to evil characters. At the top of our baddies, we have the trio, Mr. Trout, Mr. Pickles, and Mr. Grizzle. This odd trio are Snatcher's henchmen. However, because they believe in Snatcher's box troll stories, they view themselves not as hunters, but as the good guys who are doing a service to their town, even if it means killing innocent trolls.
Days of evil doing are over.
Mr. Trout and Mr. Pickles eventually start to have doubts about what they're doing, while Mr. Gristle takes delight in the more gruesome parts of the job. Though 2 out of the 3 of them are able to turn face and see what they're doing was wrong, we still have to place them in the bad tier since they're always in a group. Having Mr. Gristle definitely pulls them down. We acknowledge that Trout and Pickles at least tried to turn it around and help the box trolls disable Snatcher's deadly machine, so we won't place them too far down.
This could be our chance for redemption.
William Stank is next. Stank is a hired gun, used by Lord Pidget Dunsby. While he focuses more on hunting innocent animals, claiming that he's killed every animal under the sun, he's willing to be an assassin for hire, as long as the price is right. As such, he will chase Lionel, Susan, and Annalena to the ends of the earth, all for the sake of money. He also gets excited about getting Susan as a trophy, planning on either skinning or stuffing him like all his other animal trophies. Pretty evil. He'll still kill our heroes even after his boss dies, seeing it more as an act of pride than profit, and not wanting to let a target get away.
Now it's just a matter of shallow, self-centered pride.
As far as animated assassins go, Stank is more crazy and bloodthirsty than most. It's no surprise that Lord Pidgeot Dunsby has made it this high up in the bad tier. Nevertheless, he's still despicable, both in what he does and what he represents. Dunsby is the leader of the Optimates Club, an exclusive society for so-called great men. He's snobbish, arrogant, and prideful. He can also be closed-minded and hates acknowledging progress in certain truths, like the idea that humans might have evolved from apes.
What did he say to me?
I think he said you're wrong.
So much so that when Lionel threatens to reveal that he's been wrong about Susan, Dunsby does all he can to stop this from happening, hiring bounty hunters and trying to kill Lionel and Susan himself. He even threatens a baby to get information about his targets out of someone. While he may have led a society of great men, Dunsby is far from great. Just outside of the podium, we have the sisters. Though they may claim that all they want is for their family to be back together, clearly they care more about correcting their sister's choice to live among mortals than being a loving family. They're willing to attack and even kill anyone who stands in the way of their mission to kidnap Kubo and take him to their king. They look down on mortals and call Monkey a fool for ever loving a human.
She was an ungrateful coward!
They also kill both her and Beetle, leaving Kubo all alone. Along with being cruel, they're also creepy and seem to enjoy it. As awful as they are, the sisters claim to have a good side. They argue that they're not hunting down Kubo because they hate him, but because they actually love him. They want to blind him to the mortal world by stealing his other eye and take him up to live with his mother's side of the family in the heavens. It's a forceful and twisted version of love, and though they claim they're doing what is right, we can't give them the benefit of the doubt. To Kubo and his family, these sisters are about as wicked as they come. The Moon King takes our bronze medal of evil. For his entire life, Kubo is warned that if he is ever caught by his grandfather, he'll steal his remaining eye and force Kubo to live with him. So obviously they're not trading Christmas cards. Viewing himself as above humanity, the Moon King is willing to kill his own daughter and grandson for disobeying him. As ruler of the night, he considers his word to be law, being authoritative, cruel, and merciless. According to Kubo's mother, this way of ruling has made heaven cold and dark. Like the sisters, the Moon King has a twisted view of family, seeing them as more people to control than to love unconditionally.
You will be beyond stories.
Instead of mourning their death, he was concerned about how they failed him. However, once Kubo realizes that he's blind to humanity's goodness and uses the power of memories to make him see what he was missing, not only does the Moon King lose his own memories, but we also see that as a mortal, he has the capacity to be a better and kinder person. Though this is mostly due to Kubo and the villagers' influence on him, it's still enough to keep him from our top spot.
It turns out I'm pretty selfless.
In second place is Archibald Snatcher. He's an exterminator who wants to eliminate the box trolls by any means necessary. He's also the leader of the Red Hats, though wishes to be one of the White Hats. While he's already of high status, he hungers for even more power, as well as cheese, despite being allergic to it.
Isn't this nice?
He's arrogant, self-centered, and entitled. He resorts to blackmail, unlawful imprisonment, abuse, and attempted murder to get what he wants. He betrays his friend Herbert, Eggs' human father, by throwing Herbert into prison and threatening his son when Herbert refuses to build him a machine that would kill the box trolls. He also manipulates the townsfolk into thinking box trolls were mindless and dangerous, and wants to destroy them once and for all. He even disguises Eggs as a box troll and nearly executes him in front of the whole town.
I will end their reign of terror.
Snatcher is easily one of the darkest villains that Laika has ever made. Cruel, selfish, and insane. Earning our title of most evil, we have Other Mother. Sometimes the first baddie your studio creates ends up being the worst, or the best at being the worst. Also known as the Beldam, she's the ruler of the other world. She lures children into her realm by disguising herself as their other mother. Once lured, she forces these kids to sew buttons in their eyes.
So sharp you won't feel a thing.
As if that weren't bad enough, she then consumes their flesh and keeps their souls as her prisoners. Alright, so let's go down the list. She's manipulative, controlling, and monstrous. Though she may seem kind and loving at first, it's clear that it's all an act to make her victims feel safe and at home. like she did with Coraline. But of course, once she realizes that her usual tricks aren't going to work, Other Mother drops all niceties, and her true, cruel, and authoritarian nature is revealed. She also uses her love of games to further taunt her victims, only playing when she knows that she has an advantage. When Coraline does win, Other Mother twists the rules and refuses to acknowledge that she's lost, becoming desperate when Coraline escapes. If there's any good side to her at all, is that in a weird, twisted, selfish way, she quote-unquote loves each of her victims.
You dare disobey your mother!
While that's slightly more than what someone like the Moon King can offer, given that she doesn't love her victims enough to refrain from consuming and imprisoning them, this doesn't earn her many points. From her creepy personality, to her horrifying and evil acts, to her willingness to do whatever it takes to win, we're more than happy to give Other Mother the gold medal of evil. Alright guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.